Have you ever felt mentally exhausted but couldn't explain why? You weren't physically tired. You weren't overworked. But something inside you felt off, like your inner peace was being quietly chipped away. That feeling, my friend, is not random. Because the most dangerous people in your life, the ones who do the most damage, rarely come at you with fists or loud words. They come with smiles. They come disguised as good intentions, as friends, as family, as people who say they love you, but slowly poison your clarity, your confidence, and your calm. They don't destroy you with conflict. They drain you with silence. This is the danger most people never see coming, and that's why it's so powerful. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, and one of the great Stoic minds, once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Now, think about that. Your inner world, your soul, your peace, isn't just shaped by what you think. It's shaped by who you're around. Because thoughts don't live in isolation. They're contagious. If you spend time around the anxious, you begin to feel uneasy. If you're surrounded by people who always complain, eventually your mind becomes heavy, even if your life is fine. And if you let subtle manipulators into your world, people who twist your words, make you doubt yourself or guilt you for setting boundaries, they will paint your thoughts with fear and self-doubt. Not all poison comes in a bottle. Some comes in the form of conversations, tone, and silence. Let me give you an example. Imagine this. You're in a relationship, maybe a friend, maybe a partner, who never directly insults you. In fact, they seem supportive. But when you share good news, their smile doesn't reach their eyes. When you speak up, they interrupt. When you try to create space for yourself, they act cold or distant, making you question if you did something wrong. They don't yell, they don't hit. But slowly, they train you to shrink. They train you to question your worth. This is what I call the slow corrosion of the soul, and it's happening all around us. These people operate like rust on iron, not noticeable at first, but left unchecked, they eat through everything solid. So how do we protect ourselves? How do we guard our peace in a world where not every enemy looks like one? The Stoics gave us the first clue. Become the guardian of your mind. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And that includes who you allow to have influence over your internal world. Ask yourself honestly, who do I feel drained around even after a short conversation? Who makes me doubt my path, even when I was confident before? Who benefits when I stay small, silent, or unsure? That's where the danger lives, and it's not always intentional. Some people act from their own wounds, but the result is the same. You lose your peace. It's time to reclaim it. And you do that by remembering, your peace is your responsibility. Your circle is your choice. The Stoics didn't isolate themselves from the world. They stood in the middle of it, but refused to let it pollute their minds. They practiced discernment. They learned to observe others, not judge, not condemn, but to see clearly. Because once you see clearly, you can choose wisely. You're not obligated to keep people in your life just because they've been there a long time. Loyalty to others should never come at the cost of betrayal to yourself. Let me leave you with this. Sometimes the most powerful act of self-protection is silence. Not the silence of suppression, but the silence of withdrawal, of stepping away from the noise, of choosing not to engage with energy that steals your strength. If someone makes you feel too sensitive for setting boundaries, or selfish for wanting time alone, they are not for your peace. And you must protect that peace like it's sacred. Because it is. Don't wait for chaos to tell you someone's wrong for your life. Watch how your soul reacts to their presence. Watch how your energy feels after they leave the room. The most dangerous people don't shout. They whisper. But you can learn to listen with more than your ears. Stay aware. Stay calm. Stay sovereign. Part 1. Chronic complainers, the subtle energy thieves. You ever notice how some people always have a problem, but never a solution? It's like every conversation with them is a one-way street. They talk. You listen. They vent. You absorb. And when it's over, you're left emotionally drained, confused, or even irritated, but they walk away lighter. These are the chronic complainers. They don't shout. They don't fight. They just slowly dump their emotional weight onto you, like you're a human dumpster for their negativity. And here's the catch. It doesn't feel like manipulation at first. It feels like you're being a good friend, a good listener, a supportive sibling, partner, or co-worker. But over time, something changes. You stop looking forward to seeing them. You start avoiding their calls. You walk away from conversations feeling heavier than when you came in. And that is the first red flag. See, Stoic philosophy teaches us something crucial about people like this. It says, don't confuse compassion with self-abandonment. Marcus Aurelius once said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. But here's the hard truth. When you constantly surround yourself with people who dump problems without ever taking responsibility, they start to shape your mind. They rob you of your clarity, your energy, your peace. And worst of all, they rarely want real help. They're not seeking solutions. They're seeking a stage, an audience, someone to validate their victimhood without challenging it. Because complaining feels good to them. It gives them a sense of control, but that control comes at your expense. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a difference between someone who's hurting and someone who's addicted to the sound of their own suffering. A true friend shares their pain and is open to healing. A chronic complainer just recycles the same story, over and over, month after month, year after year. And if you're not careful, you become their unpaid therapist, their emotional sponge. You carry their burden while they make no effort to change. That's not kindness. That's slow-motion self-destruction. So what do? Do we cut them off? Go silent. Get cold and distant? No, that's not Stoicism. The Stoic answer isn't cruelty. It's clarity. Not coldness, but boundaries. Epictetus taught us, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. That means you have the right and the responsibility to choose what energy you let in. So start by asking yourself, do I feel more grounded or more scattered after spending time with this person? Am I offering support or being emotionally used? Is this connection mutual, or is it draining me to keep them afloat? These questions aren't selfish, they're essential. Because here's something most people forget. Your peace has a price, and you pay it with your attention. Let me give you an example. Years ago, I had a colleague who always seemed to be in a crisis. Bad relationships, drama at work, endless chaos. Every time we talked, I felt like I was walking into a storm I didn't cause and couldn't stop. At first, I thought I was helping, but eventually I realized something sobering. My presence didn't change their pattern. It only enabled it. So I tried something different. Instead of saying, "That sucks, I'm so sorry," I started saying, "What are you going to do about it?" The energy changed immediately. They became defensive, irritated, less interested in talking to me. Why? Because I stopped being a safe space for complaint and started being a mirror for accountability. And that's when I learned, not everyone wants to grow. Some just want company in their misery. But you're not here for that. You're here because you value your energy, your peace, your mind. And if you're going to live like a Stoic, not just read the words, you have to live deliberately. That means choosing your emotional investments the same way you'd choose where to spend your money. Carefully, thoughtfully, with intention. So the next time someone tries to pull you into their endless storm, remember this: you're not obligated to sink with them just because you once shared a boat. Let's wrap with this. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors with locks. You can still open them. You can still let people in. But you decide who comes through and how long they stay. So let the chronic complainers do what they do. Let them perform. Let them recycle their drama. But don't let them live rent-free in your mind. You have too much strength to waste on noise, and too much purpose to carry what was never yours to begin with. Part 2. Subtle saboteurs, the quiet killers of confidence. Sometimes the people who seem most supportive are the very ones quietly pulling you down. They don't yell. They don't insult. In fact, they speak with a smile. But hidden beneath their soft tone is a seed of doubt, a quiet question, a hesitant remark, a little comment that lingers in your mind long after the conversation ends. Are you sure that's realistic? Well, most people don't really succeed at that, but hey, give it a try. You've changed a lot lately. Are you okay? At first glance, they sound concerned, even caring. But listen closely, and you'll realize they're not cheering you on. They're softening your momentum, eroding your confidence, dimming your fire without ever striking a match. These are the subtle saboteurs. They operate quietly. You might even call them well-intentioned doubters. But the damage they cause is real, and it's personal. Because unlike direct criticism, which is easy to recognize and reject, veiled pessimism sneaks past your defenses. It makes you second-guess yourself. And worst of all, it often comes from people you trust, friends, partners, even family, the ones who are supposed to support you. And that's what makes their sabotage so effective. It's wrapped in the language of love. But Stoicism teaches us this: not everyone who sits at your table is rooting for your growth. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject." Let me take that a step further. The opinion of someone who doesn't believe in their own potential will rarely support yours. Subtle saboteurs often carry unresolved dreams. They've convinced themselves that life has limits, that risk is foolish, and that people don't really change. So when you start to rise, when you begin stepping into your strength, it threatens their comfort zone. Your growth becomes a mirror they don't want to face, so they try to blur it. Not by tearing you down directly, but by nudging you toward hesitation. By questioning, not condemning. By just being honest. But honesty without encouragement isn't truth. It's projection. Here's a question worth asking. Who do you feel smaller around, even though they say they're proud of you? Who gives compliments that feel conditional? Who plants questions in your mind that weren't there before you spoke to them? This is where you need to be alert. Because if someone consistently makes you feel less capable, less clear, less confident, no matter how kind their voice may sound, they are not safe for your ambition. And this is where the Stoic response becomes powerful. We don't argue. We don't beg to be understood. We don't over-explain ourselves in hopes of winning them over. No, we observe. We detach. We protect our emotional space, like a fortress. Stoicism isn't about being cold. It's about being clear. Seneca said, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you. And when that's not possible, then protect your peace like it's sacred." Because it is. You don't owe anyone an explanation for chasing what sets your soul on fire. You don't need permission to grow. You don't need approval to evolve. Some people will only support you until your progress outgrows their comfort. And when that moment comes, you'll hear it. Not in screams, but in soft sabotage. That's your sign. Let me share a personal story. Years ago, I shared a bold new business idea with someone I considered a close friend. I was lit up with excitement. But after I finished explaining it, they looked at me and said, "That's cool, but don't you think you're aiming a little high?" It hit me like a punch wrapped in a pillow. I nodded politely, laughed it off. But later that night, I found myself rethinking the entire plan. Not because the idea had changed, but because my mindset had. One sentence, one seed of doubt, and suddenly, I was off track. That's when I realized, subtle sabotage isn't always about destroying you. It's about distracting you just long enough that you sabotage yourself. Never again. So if you've got people like this in your life, here's your action. Set inner boundaries. Not everything needs to be shared with everyone. Watch reactions closely. People who love you will light up when you grow. And most importantly, keep your vision strong even when the voices around you get soft. You don't need to fight them. You just need to see clearly. Because the Stoic path isn't about proving people wrong. It's about staying right within yourself. So when you hear the subtle doubts, the gentle resistance, the smile-laced skepticism, nod if you must, but never hand them the pen to rewrite your story. You've come too far to shrink now. Part 3. Credit takers, when your success becomes their spotlight. You work hard. You stay late. Go the extra mile. Do the inner work that no one sees. And then, the moment things start going right, someone else steps in and says, "We've been working hard on this. I told them that idea last year. I'm glad they finally took my advice." Sound familiar? This, right here, is the signature move of the credit taker. People who don't just watch your success, they leech off it. People who shift the spotlight subtly, but intentionally, toward themselves the moment you start to rise. And the danger isn't always in what they say, it's in what they steal. Because here's the thing, they don't come at you with envy. They come wrapped in praise. They'll say, "I'm so proud of you. You know, I always believed in you," or "I told them you were going to make it." It sounds supportive. But it's not about you. It's about them being seen as connected to your win. As if your moment somehow validates their importance. They're not interested in your growth. They're invested in their positioning. This is the kind of subtle ego play most people miss. It's not toxic in the way we're used to spotting it. It's more slippery. Almost flattering even. Until you realize they never clapped for you unless they were in the picture too. And here's where Stoicism gives us the mental armor to handle this. Marcus Aurelius said, "Ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. Sanity means tying it to your own actions." So what does that mean for you? It means this. When people try to absorb your light, you don't dim yourself. You just stop seeking their validation altogether. Let your results speak louder than your response. You see, credit takers feed off reaction. They want you to get upset. They want you to argue, to defend, to fight for recognition, because that makes it look like you're insecure. But the truth is, confidence is quiet. You don't need to scream to prove something you've already shown. The Stoic response isn't to expose the credit taker, it's to outlast them. Consistently. Silently. Powerfully. Because here's what they can't steal: your character. They can imitate your words, echo your ideas, and insert themselves into your victories. But they can never duplicate the work you put in. And deep down, they know it. Let me give you a real-world example. I once worked with someone who always showed up after the heavy lifting was done, but somehow ended up in every group email, every photo, every meeting when the success rolled in. At first I was frustrated. I wanted to call it out. I wanted credit. But then I realized their whole identity was built on proximity to other people's greatness, and mine was built on earning it. So I chose the Stoic path. I said nothing. I let my consistency do the talking. And over time, people started to notice, quietly, naturally. Because results don't lie, even when people do. Now ask yourself, who in your life claps louder when they get the recognition than when you do? Who only shows up when the cameras are rolling, the audience is watching, the moment is ripe? Who makes your wins feel like shared credit, even when they contributed nothing? These aren't teammates. These are opportunists. And the best defense against them isn't confrontation. It's detachment. You don't need their applause. You don't need their approval. And you definitely don't need their version of the story. Because your journey, your effort, your struggle, your sacrifice speaks for itself. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it." In the same way, don't argue about your value. Just embody it, day after day, decision after decision. The world is full of people who want the credit without the cost. Let them chase the spotlight. You stay grounded, stay disciplined. Let your impact do the talking. Because in the end, no one remembers who claimed the success. They remember who earned it. Part 4. Silent competitors, when politeness masks rivalry. Not every competitor announces themselves. Some of the most intense rivalries you'll ever face will be silent. They won't challenge you directly. They won't disrespect you. In fact, they might even compliment you from time to time. But beneath the surface, they're keeping score. Every move you make, every win you earn, every inch you grow. They see it, and quietly, they turn your progress into fuel for their own race. These are the silent competitors. They smile in conversation, but compare behind closed doors. They mimic your habits, echo your language, copy your strategy. But they'll never say, "You inspired me," because in their mind, admitting that would mean you're ahead. And that's the thing. They don't hate you. They just don't know how to coexist with your growth without turning it into a scoreboard. So what do? They stay close, but not close enough to celebrate you. They support you, but never out loud. And when you succeed, they go quiet. Not because they didn't notice, but because deep down, they did. Now here's the trap most people fall into. We sense this energy shift, and we start to question ourselves. Did I come off arrogant? Maybe I should tone it down. I don't want them to feel bad. So we shrink. We hide parts of our success. We downplay our wins to keep others comfortable. But here's what the Stoics would say to that. Never dim your flame just because others are afraid of their own shadows. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. In other words, stay on your path. Don't let someone else's insecurity rewrite your truth. Let me give you a real-life example. I once worked with someone who was always friendly, always happy for me, at least on the surface. But over time, I noticed something strange. Whenever I shared an idea, they'd mirror it later as their own. Whenever I hit a milestone, they'd go silent, then announce their own achievement days later. Whenever I grew, they'd try to grow faster. Not with me, but against me. It wasn't competition in the open. It was competition wrapped in courtesy. At first, I wanted to confront it. But then I realized there's nothing to confront, because it was never about me. It was about how they felt watching someone else rise while staying in the same place. That's when the Stoic mindset kicked in. I stopped trying to figure them out, stopped needing approval, stopped shrinking myself to protect their comfort. And I remembered this truth: your success will always reveal who's genuinely in your corner and who was just standing there for the view. Some people only support you when they're ahead. The moment you start leveling up, their applause turns into awkward silence. And that's okay, because not everyone who walks beside you is meant to rise with you. So what do you do when you sense a silent competitor in your life? Here's the answer. You don't compete back. You don't explain your progress. And you definitely don't apologize for winning. You keep showing up. You keep building. You keep growing. Not in spite of them, but because your purpose is too big to be paused by anyone else's insecurity. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life." And one of the greatest freedoms is this: being unapologetically yourself, even when others can't handle it. So if someone in your circle feels more like a shadow than a supporter, if they imitate your steps but never celebrate your journey, if they treat life like a race you never agreed to run, let them be. Your only real competition is who you were yesterday. And the path ahead? It belongs to the focused, the consistent, and the unapologetically authentic. Part 5. Subtle victims, when guilt becomes a tool. Not every manipulator raises their voice. Some do the opposite. They lower it. They sigh. They slump. They speak in soft tones, laced with sadness, and they say things like, "I guess it's always me who ends up alone. You're probably too busy for someone like me. Don't worry about it. I'm used to being forgotten." And just like that, they've taken the focus off the facts and placed it on your guilt. These are the subtle victims, people who don't ask for power, but pull it from you by appearing powerless. They don't control with anger, they control with sorrow. And if you're not careful, they'll have you rearranging your life not out of love, but out of obligation. Now don't misunderstand me. We all go through seasons of pain. We all need help sometimes. This isn't about dismissing those who are truly struggling. It's about recognizing when sadness is no longer a cry for help, but a strategy for control. Subtle victims create emotional contracts you never agreed to. They show you their wounds, not to heal, but to hold you hostage. You pull back to set a boundary. They crumble and say, "Wow, just when I needed you most." You try to make time for your goals. They sigh and whisper, "I guess your dreams matter more than people now." It's not that they want support. They want submission. Here's the Stoic truth. Compassion is not compliance. Seneca taught that he who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than necessary. But subtle victims make you suffer with them. They draw you into their endless storms, and if you let them, they'll convince you that it's your duty to stay and drown beside them. But Stoicism reminds us, you can care deeply without caving completely. You can be kind without becoming captive. Let me share something personal. There was a person in my life who always seemed to be on the verge of collapse. At first, I offered support, encouragement, time. I gave and gave. But nothing ever changed. No matter how much I helped, they stayed stuck. And when I pulled back to take care of my own needs, I was made to feel like a villain. As if self-care was selfish, and my absence meant betrayal. That's when I realized, some people don't want healing. They want a permanent audience. They need someone to play the rescuer, so they never have to stand on their own. And the more you show up, the less they're required to. So, what's the Stoic response? We don't mock, we don't shame, we don't fight. We simply draw the line. You say, I care about you, but I can't carry you. You say, I see your pain, but I can't let it become my prison. And here's what happens next. If they respect you, they'll rise. If they were using you, they'll retreat. Either way, you get clarity, because true connection grows in mutual responsibility, not emotional blackmail. Marcus Aurelius said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. And part of that power is knowing this. You are not cruel for refusing to be controlled by someone else's helplessness. You are not heartless for setting boundaries with someone who uses their sadness to dominate every space. You are not wrong for wanting peace in your own life, even when someone else chooses chaos in theirs. So next time you feel pulled into someone else's emotional quicksand, ask yourself, am I helping, or am I being emotionally hijacked? Are they seeking healing, or just sympathy with no action? Is this relationship built on love, or on guilt? Your answers will reveal everything, because the subtle victim doesn't need another savior. They need to see that survival is possible, without control, without codependency, and without dragging others down to feel lifted. And maybe your firm compassion is the first time they've ever seen what healthy strength actually looks like. You can be the calm in their storm, but never let the storm move inside you. Part 6. The explainers. When words replace accountability. Some people have an explanation for everything. They hurt you, but they didn't mean to. They lie, but it was more complicated than you think. They let you down, but they were going through a lot. You see, they're not apologizing. They're not changing. They're explaining. And while it might sound intelligent, mature, even insightful, it's a tactic, a deflection. A smokescreen made of long sentences, emotional backstories, and selective logic. Because if they can talk enough, maybe you'll stop noticing what they're not doing. These are the explainers. They weaponize language, not to connect but to confuse. They intellectualize their flaws, rationalize their behavior, philosophize their mistakes into fog, and suddenly you're the one feeling unsure. You ask yourself, am I being too harsh? Maybe they really are self-aware. Is it possible I'm overreacting? And just like that, the conversation becomes about their mind, not your reality. But here's the Stoic truth. Self-awareness without action is just decoration. Seneca said, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. In other words, don't just talk about your values, live them. But explainers do the opposite. They flood you with context to avoid consequence. They talk in circles to avoid accountability. And here's what makes it even trickier. They're often intelligent, articulate, emotionally aware on the surface. They'll say all the right things, but their behavior never changes. Because deep down, it was never about making it right. It was about sounding right long enough for you to let it go. Let me give you an example. I knew someone who would always give these profound, heartfelt monologues after every mistake. They'd tell stories about childhood trauma. They'd reference books, psychology, even spiritual lessons. And it worked, at first. I'd walk away thinking, wow, they really get it. But weeks later, the same behavior, the same pattern, the same hurt wrapped in a new explanation. And that's when it clicked. They weren't growing. They were performing. So how do we handle this? Do we argue? Do we try to prove the gap between their words and their actions? No. The Stoic way is simple. Watch patterns, not paragraphs. Marcus Aurelius said, "You should be more concerned with your character than your reputation, because your character is what you really are." So instead of being impressed by words, ask, what's the pattern? Are they doing the same thing again and again? Are they owning it or just explaining it away? And if the answer keeps coming back to talk without change, then it's time to stop debating. Because here's the hard truth. Real accountability is quiet. It doesn't come with a speech. It comes with behavior that makes the speech unnecessary. You don't need an essay. You need evidence. And if they keep choosing explanation over evolution, then you have every right to step back, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. Stoicism teaches us to lead with clarity, not chaos. To value what is, not just what is said. So the next time someone hands you a carefully crafted excuse instead of a changed behavior, nod, listen politely, then step away and watch what they actually do next. Because in the end, words are wind. But patterns? Patterns tell the truth. Part 7. The flatterers, when praise comes with a price. Not all praise is pure. Some compliments aren't about you at all. They're about control. You've probably heard it before. You're amazing. No one else could do what you do. I don't know how I'd survive without you. You're the only one who gets me. And at first, it feels good. It feels affirming. You feel seen, but wait long enough, and the energy shifts. The moment you set a boundary, say no, or take a step back, suddenly that praise becomes guilt. Wow. After everything I've said about you? Guess I was wrong about you. I didn't think you were like that. That's when you realize it was never real appreciation. It was emotional currency, and now they want their change. These are the flatterers, people who use compliments not to uplift you, but to buy you. Buy your loyalty, your time, your silence, your agreement. And they're good at it too. Because flattery doesn't come in loud packages. It's not shouting. It's subtle. It's polished. It's tailored perfectly to what you want to hear. But underneath the sweet words lies a quiet expectation. You owe them now. Here's the Stoic truth. You can accept praise, but you must stay grounded in truth. Epictetus once said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Why? Because chasing approval makes you vulnerable to manipulation. It weakens your inner compass. And eventually, you trade your truth for applause that was never real in the first place. Flatterers don't care about your character. They care about your compliance. And the moment you stop serving their needs, their admiration vanishes and judgment takes its place. Let me share a quick story. A while back, I worked with someone who constantly lifted me up in public, said I was the smartest, most reliable person they'd ever met. It felt good. Until one day, I pushed back on something I couldn't agree with. The tone changed instantly. Suddenly, I was difficult, not a team player, arrogant. It hit me hard at first, but then I realized They weren't praising me. They were rewarding obedience. And the moment I stopped playing the role they wanted, the mask came off. So what's the Stoic way to deal with people like this? Simple. Stay humble. Stay honest. Stay anchored. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, receive without pride. Let go without attachment. That applies to praise too. When someone compliments you, receive it, but don't build your identity on it. Don't let your sense of worth be tied to the approval of others, especially those who only lift you up when it serves them. Because true praise has no strings attached. And when you meet someone who flatters you excessively, ask yourself, would they still value me if I told them no? Does their praise empower me or bind me? Am I being uplifted or positioned for control? Real support feels steady, quiet, consistent. It doesn't vanish when you set a boundary. It doesn't flip when you speak your truth. And it doesn't demand that you become someone else just to stay liked. So the next time someone showers you with excessive praise, listen closely, not to the words, but to the weight behind them. Because if admiration turns into guilt when you say no, it was never admiration at all. It was a deal you didn't agree to. You don't need to be worshipped. You just need to be seen, clearly, truthfully, without performance. That's what Stoic strength is, to stay true to yourself, even when praise becomes pressure. Part 8. Guilt trippers. When disappointment becomes a weapon. Some people don't need to yell or argue to control you. All they have to do is look disappointed. They sigh. They go quiet. They say things like, "Wow, I didn't think you'd do this. I guess I just expected more from you." If that's what you feel is right. And suddenly your chest tightens. You question your decision. You feel a strange pressure to fix something, but you're not even sure what went wrong. This is the silent power of guilt trippers. They don't attack your logic. They attack your conscience. They use sadness like a spotlight. They don't say you hurt me. They make you feel like you've abandoned them. And here's the catch. It doesn't feel like manipulation. It feels like you've done something wrong. Not because you actually have, but because they made sure it feels that way. You choose a boundary, and they paint it as betrayal. You choose growth, and they call it selfish. You choose peace, and they frame it as punishment. But here's the truth the Stoics knew well. Feeling guilty is not the same as being guilty. Marcus Aurelius said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Simple, clear, strong. He didn't say, if they're disappointed, you must have done something wrong. Stoicism teaches us to measure our choices by reason, not by emotional pressure from others. And that's especially important when dealing with guilt trippers, because their greatest skill is making you responsible for their emotions. And that's a trap. Let me give you a real example. I once told someone close to me that I needed space, a few weeks to focus on a personal project. I said it kindly. I was clear. I was respectful. Their response? They went quiet, cold, and later said, "I guess I'm just not important anymore." It stung, not because I believed it, but because it worked. For a moment I felt pulled to undo my decision, to give up the boundary, to prove I still cared. But that's how it works. They turn your clarity into their emotional leverage. And the moment I gave in, I would have taught them this: guilt works. Use it again. So what's the Stoic way forward? You don't argue. You don't over-explain. You don't go chasing their approval. You return to clarity. Ask yourself, was my decision rooted in peace or fear? Did I choose this out of wisdom or people-pleasing? Is the guilt I'm feeling based on their reaction or on my own values? When the answer comes from your core, not their disappointment, you'll know you're on the right path. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And part of mastering yourself is learning to stand tall while others frown, to make strong decisions without needing applause, to hold your boundary without guilt, dragging you back into the storm. Because let's be honest, people who truly respect you will not use pain to persuade you. They will not twist your empathy into obedience. So the next time someone says, "I just thought you cared more," pause for a second. Then remind yourself, I do care. I care enough not to lie. I care enough to speak clearly, and I care enough to not trade my peace for approval. That's not coldness. That's strength. And sometimes your strength will disappoint people who relied on your weakness. Let them adjust. You keep walking. Part 9. Constant critics, when feedback becomes a cage. Not every critic is loud. Some speak softly, passive, polite, and poisonous. They say things like, "I guess that's one way to do it. You've changed. Not sure if it's for the better, but okay. It's nice, but don't get ahead of yourself." And just like that, they plant the seed, doubt, insecurity. Second guessing. These are the constant critics. People who don't offer advice to help you grow, but to keep you small. They don't want to guide you. They want to ground you, and not in reality, in their comfort zone. What makes them dangerous isn't what they say, it's how they say it. They wrap criticism in just enough ambiguity that it can't be challenged. They never say, "I'm jealous." They say, "I'm just giving you honest feedback." But let's be honest. There's a difference between helpful feedback and emotional sabotage disguised as concern. You start a business, they say, "Hope you're ready for the stress." You hit a milestone, they say, "Don't let it go to your head." You make a big change, they say, "It's risky, but I guess you know what you're doing." It's not advice, it's a leash. It's meant to keep you second-guessing, because if you grow too much, if you succeed too far, they fear you'll leave them behind, emotionally, intellectually, socially. So they chip away at your confidence little by little. Not by stopping you, but by slowing you. Here's the Stoic approach to dealing with them. You don't block out every voice, but you filter it through your values, not your emotions. Marcus Aurelius said, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I will gladly change. It is the truth I seek." That's powerful. And it shows us the difference. Truth corrects you. Criticism without clarity confuses you. So the question is not, did they hurt my feelings? The question is what they said aligned with my principles? If it is, thank them and grow. If it isn't, let it go and move on. Let me give you a personal example. Years ago, I started putting my work out publicly. A friend I respected kept saying things like, "You're brave for doing that. I just hope people don't laugh." At first, I thought they were looking out for me, but over time, I realized I started hesitating more, holding back, editing myself to avoid ridicule that hadn't even happened yet. That's when I understood it wasn't constructive. It was containing. They weren't warning me out of wisdom. They were reacting out of fear. Their fear, and I was borrowing it at the cost of my own momentum. Never again. Stoicism teaches us that not all discomfort is valuable. Sometimes it's just noise in disguise. So the next time someone offers you a comment that makes you shrink instead of sharpen, pause. Ask yourself, do they want to see me evolve or stay familiar? Is this critique challenging me or trying to contain me? Am I changing for growth or changing to be accepted? Because if you keep shaping yourself around the insecurities of others, you'll end up a version of you that's acceptable to everyone, except yourself. Real feedback honors your effort, even when it challenges your direction. Constant criticism dismisses your worth and masks it as humility. Don't fall for it. You weren't born to live inside someone else's limits. You were born to learn, to sharpen, to rise, and yes, sometimes to disrupt the comfort zones around you. Let them be uncomfortable. You, stay focused. Stay grounded. Stay true. Part 10. Opportunists. When support only shows up after the spotlight. Success doesn't just change your life, it changes who shows up in it. And the moment things start going well, new faces appear. Old ones come back around. Everyone's excited. Everyone's supportive. Everyone says, I always knew you'd make it. But where were they when the lights were off? Where were they when you were in the middle of the storm, fighting self-doubt, scraping together belief, pushing forward with no applause? That's the thing about opportunists. They don't show up when you need help. They show up when they need visibility. These people don't want to build with you. They want to stand next to you once the building's already finished. They love success, but only when it's convenient. They admire the crown, but they disappear when it's time to carry the cross. And here's how you spot them. They're quiet during your struggle. They're absent when you're in the grind. But the moment you start gaining traction, they resurface with praise, with smiles, with sudden loyalty. They're not drawn to you. They're drawn to your momentum. Marcus Aurelius said, when you have the power to benefit someone, why put it off? Opportunists don't live by that. They wait, they watch, they calculate. They offer nothing when the soil is being tilled, but want credit when the harvest comes in. And if you're not careful, you'll mistake their excitement for loyalty. But here's a truth you need to hold close. Not everyone who claps for you is in your corner. Some are just clapping loud enough to be seen. Let me give you a real-life example. A friend of mine launched a project after years of quiet work. Late nights, self-doubt, multiple failures. During that time, few checked in. Few offered encouragement. But when it finally took off, suddenly the group chats lit up. Proud of you, bro. We should collaborate sometime. I knew you had it in you. Funny how no one had time during the uphill climb, but now everyone wanted a seat at the top. And that's the moment he learned. Visibility reveals who was really invested and who was simply waiting. So how do we protect ourselves? Not by being cold, not by shutting everyone out, but by using Stoic discernment. Seneca reminds us, associate with those who will make you better. That's the rule. Don't choose companions based on convenience. Choose them based on character. The ones who support you when there's nothing to gain. Those are your people. The ones who remind you of your worth when the world is silent. Those are your circle. And when success does come, because it will, those are the people you take with you, not the ones who waited for you to shine just so they could bask in the light. Here's the filter. Who asked how you were when you had nothing to offer? Who celebrated your effort before there were results? Who didn't need to benefit from you to believe in you? That's your real tribe. Everyone else? Let them clap from the audience, but don't hand them a backstage pass. Because in the end, success is a great mirror. It reflects everything: your growth, your resilience, and yes, the true nature of the people around you. Don't resent opportunists. Just recognize them, and remember, your peace is built on who you let close. Let character, not clout, decide who walks beside you. Part 11. The irresponsible, when accountability becomes a vanishing act. Some people are allergic to responsibility. No matter what happens, no matter what harm they cause, somehow it's never their fault. They blame. They deflect. They twist your words. And when cornered, they don't apologize. They rewrite the story. That's not what I meant. You're too sensitive. You're remembering it wrong. And just like that, your lived experience is put on trial. You start second-guessing yourself, not because you were wrong, but because they refused to be accountable. These are the irresponsible. They don't explode. They evaporate from accountability. They make you feel like the problem for simply having boundaries. They spin the narrative so well, you start wondering, maybe I was too harsh. Maybe I misunderstood. But deep down, your body knows the truth. You felt the lie. You saw the behavior. You knew the shift. And yet they keep talking until you don't trust your own memory. This isn't just conflict. It's manipulation. It's gaslighting dressed up as mature discussion. Now here's where Stoicism offers you armor. Marcus Aurelius said, "If someone can prove me wrong, I will change, but I will not be ashamed to stand for what I know is true." In other words, truth is your anchor, not their reaction, not their approval, not even their apology. Because the Stoics understood something we often forget. You don't need permission to walk away from what's harmful. And you don't need an apology to stop explaining what they refuse to hear. Let me share a personal moment. Years ago, someone close to me crossed a serious line, broke trust, lied, deflected. When I tried to confront it, they smiled and said, "I think you're just reading too much into things." No apology, no acknowledgement, just calm denial, as if the facts were up for debate. At first, I stayed in the conversation, hoping, explaining, trying to be fair. But the more I explained, the more I felt like I was being put on trial for my own clarity. That's when I realized, this is not a conversation, it's a trap. So I chose the Stoic path. Not anger, not revenge. Just departure. Because clarity is enough. Truth is enough. And peace never requires permission. If you're facing someone like this, here's what I want you to remember. You are not difficult for expecting honesty. You are not dramatic for naming the harm. You are not unkind for choosing to protect your energy when someone refuses to own their part. You don't need to convince someone who's committed to avoiding responsibility. You don't need to stay in cycles that only spin. What you do need is clarity and the courage to act on it. Seneca reminds us, it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. And many irresponsible people crave one thing: control of the narrative. But you don't have to crave closure. You don't have to wait for validation from the one who caused the harm. You can exit the chaos quietly, because truth doesn't need a mic. It just needs your choice. So if someone keeps dodging responsibility, if they twist facts instead of owning their part, if they use clever words to cover broken actions, you have one responsibility now. Believe yourself. Not their version, not their edit, not their spin. Your clarity is the compass, and sometimes walking away is the wisdom. Let's be honest. Some of the most dangerous people in our lives don't come to destroy us with violence or chaos. They come with smiles, with soft words, with good intentions. But behind the kindness is confusion. Behind the support is self-interest. And behind the silence is slow erosion. They don't take your life. They take your clarity. And without clarity, you lose everything else. Your peace, your power, your purpose. That's why this conversation matters. Not all smiles are safe. Not all feedback is for your growth. Not all support is rooted in love. And if we're not careful, we end up adjusting who we are, not to rise, but to remain accepted. We shrink so others feel tall. We stay quiet so others stay comfortable. We keep harmful people close just because they mean well. But Stoicism teaches us something radically freeing. You do not owe access to anyone who disturbs your inner stillness. Marcus Aurelius said, "Look well into thyself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if you will always look." That's the invitation. To look inward, not outward. To choose clarity over comfort. To trust that still voice inside you, even when others try to talk you out of it. And let's be real, it's hard. It's hard to walk away from people who never hit you, but hurt you. Hard to create distance without guilt. Hard to trust your intuition when it whispers, "This isn't safe," even though everything looks normal. But here's what you need to hear. Peace doesn't always come from adding more love. Sometimes, it comes from subtracting the wrong presence. So here are your final Stoic reminders. 3 principles I hope you carry forward from this entire journey. 1. Cut access, not people. You don't need to burn bridges. You just don't have to keep inviting people across them. Boundaries don't require explanation. They require consistency. It's not personal. It's clarity. 2. Don't shrink to be accepted. You were not made to be tolerated. You were made to become. Anyone who can't handle your growth wasn't helping it anyway. As Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." That's not failure. That's freedom. 3. Let silence speak your strength. You don't have to argue. You don't have to defend. When the time is right, walk quietly and let results do the talking. Your calm is not weakness, it's restraint. Your silence is not fear. It's wisdom. You are allowed to outgrow people. You are allowed to protect your energy. You are allowed to walk away from situations that drain your clarity without guilt, without apology. Because at the end of the day, clarity is your compass. And when you follow it, you begin to live a life that's not reactive, not performative, but anchored. Anchored in values. Anchored in peace. Anchored in the kind of strength the world doesn't always recognize, but feels when you walk in the room. So if you take one thing away from all of this, let it be this. You don't need to prove yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You just need to stay aligned with who you were born to be. The moment you stop explaining, the moment you stop shrinking, the moment you stop confusing loyalty with access, that's the moment you reclaim your power. And if you've made it this far, maybe you're not just learning Stoicism. Maybe you're ready to live it. So take a breath. Take inventory of your circle. And when in doubt, choose clarity. Even if it costs you comfort, even if it leaves you alone for a while, even if it disrupts everything familiar, because your peace is worth it. If this message spoke to something deep inside you, don't just listen, live it. Unfollow the noise. Reclaim your peace and surround yourself with what strengthens, not weakens, your spirit. Subscribe to this channel if you're ready to walk the Stoic path, not just in thought, but in action. Because here, we don't chase approval, we build inner power. And remember, you are not here to be liked. You are here to become unshakable.